as a pandemic.
It was near the end of 2019. A type of new coronavirus began to emerge and spread silently. A rapidly growing number of people were developing a dry cough and fever before getting pneumonia, and for some it turned fatal. The WHO has named the disease COVID-19, indicating that a type of coronavirus is causing infections in humans. It didn't take long before cases of the new virus were confirmed outside China.
The World Health Organization declared the outbreak an international public health emergency.
Italy is on total lockdown after coronavirus containment.
절반 이상이 자택에 머무를 정도로.
An Iranian politician has died after contracting the coronavirus.
As the 21st century moves forward, planes can transport viruses to any country on the globe, and one pandemic panic just seems to merge into another. And this is the third time humanity has been seriously challenged by coronavirus.
Coronaviruses are a group of viruses that infect mammals and birds. There are 4 sort of contemporary human coronaviruses that cause common colds in us. Now, coronaviruses have the largest RNA genome in nature. If you look at the virus in the electron microscope, it looks like a circle with a halo around it, hence the name corona. One of the most complex mechanisms in terms of how an RNA virus can replicate. In the 21st century, there have been 3 highly pathogenic emerging coronaviruses that have originated from bats that have infected humans, and that's SARS coronavirus in 2003, MERS coronavirus in 2012, and the 2019 novel coronavirus that emerged in Wuhan of last year.
It was early 2003, the beginning of the battle against severe acute respiratory syndrome. The SARS outbreak was the first deadly epidemic caused by coronavirus. First appeared in Guangdong province, China. Professor Ralph Barrick from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill was one of the first leading experts who started research on human coronavirus decades ago.
I received an email from a group at the CDC who had contacted several prominent coronavirologists across the country, and they wanted to have a conference call. They said that this novel virus in China looked like a coronavirus, and they were asking for advice. We were the first group that developed a reverse genetic system for SARS coronavirus. What that means is that you can begin to ask the functions of genes. What genes are important in replication? What genes are important in tissue tropism? So how did the virus jump between species? And also you can use this platform to make live attenuated viruses that are not pathogenic.
SARS had spread with alarming speed. In February 2003, a Chinese doctor arrived at a hotel in Hong Kong, feeling unwell. Unknown to him, he was harbouring the SARS virus. Within 24 hours of checking into his room, 16 other guests had been infected, and over the following days, 5 boarded planes to overseas destinations, spreading the virus to Vietnam, Singapore, and Canada.
For us here in Toronto, we really were unprepared for something like that. So when the first cases arose, they were detected as something going on, an unusual pneumonia, but obviously having never experienced something like SARS before. We were also unlucky in that those first cases happened to spread quite a bit of SARS to other people, and so we ended up with a fair number of people before we knew what was going on. First things we learned was we didn't have a great way of actually communicating the information to people who needed to know it. So at the time, public health didn't have good contact with hospitals. They were sort of separate from hospitals. They also didn't have a way of contacting infectious disease doctors like me.
8 months after SARS began circulating, it was contained. The virus died out. But hidden coronavirus is like a snake in the grass. It will eventually jump from animal onto human when people come into close contact with bats, camels, or civet cats.
There have been several reports that have suggested that most mammalian coronaviruses came from bats. And there's about 1,300 species of bats. There's been estimates from Ian Lipkin's laboratory that anywhere from each bat species could harbor anywhere from 6 to 10 different coronaviruses. And these then, from bats, spilled into other mammals and birds.
Emerging diseases come from specific regions on the planet. We call them the hotspots for emerging disease. Places like Southeast Asia, South Asia, Central West Africa, and Latin America. These are areas with a lot of wildlife, a lot of diversity. When humans come into contact with those wildlife species, we have a chance of picking up the viruses.
The man reportedly fell sick after treating the camel for a runny nose. MERS, first detected back in 2012, is a fatal respiratory illness with flu-like symptoms.
The problem is the death rate is 94 of those 320 cases. There's no cure and there's no treatment for this disease yet.
MERS is the second little-known coronavirus to be making headlines globally after SARS. MERS was first identified in a patient in Saudi Arabia in 2012. Symptoms include fever, cough, and shortness of breath. For many, those symptoms are followed by more acute complications such as pneumonia and kidney failure.
문제는 메르스의 확산 속도가 발원지인 중동 전체 나라를 합친 것보다 더 빠르다는 겁니다.
바이러스의 변이가 일어난 사실이 처음으로 공식 확인됐습니다.
슈퍼 전파자 단 5명이 전체 환자 186명 가운데 81.3%인
Since 2012, 27 countries have reported cases, with 2,494 people confirmed infected and 858 dead.
바이러스가 한참 증식해서 폐렴이 있는 상황에서 기침 가래로 바이러스 양이 많아서 그 기침 재채기 할 때 그 비말에 바이러스가 많다 보니까
Samsung Medical Center failed to contain the spread of the MERS virus. We have caused too much pain and concern for the Korean people.
너무 큰 고통과 걱정을 끼쳐드렸습니다.
I extend my sincerest apologies.
사죄합니다.
The country's last MERS patient, a man who had been suffering from cancer, died from MERS-related complications on November 25th. The ministry says it will continue to be on alert. It also says it'll improve its readiness to deal with such outbreaks in the future.
Now time comes to the current COVID-19 outbreak we are now facing with. COVID-19 is just like the cousin of SARS, sharing 70% of their genetic material. While SARS replicated deep in people's lungs, probably contributing to the higher mortality rate, that also made it less likely to spread than the COVID-19 virus. The new coronavirus grows in people's noses and airways, so it can be more easily spread through coughing and sneezing, like the flu. On February 9th, the death toll from COVID-19 surpassed that of SARS. In the days since, it has climbed even higher.
Right now, even though we're still early in the process, the mortality is approximately 3.5% to 4%. With SARS, it was about 9 or 10%. With MERS, it was about 30%. So right now, it looks like it is more mild than those two.
As we see for many viruses, that it may actually start to lose its pathogenesis as it gets transmitted more readily. What is different is that this virus seems to be more transmissible. So that means that we may anticipate more cases of infection, but the overall fatality rate may be lower.
As the world struggles to try to contain the coronavirus, scientists from all over the globe are racing to develop one of medicine's most powerful weapons, a vaccine. While researchers are making fast progress, a vaccine is probably more than a year away.
The NIH is developing a vaccine that we hope will be able to test for safety within the next 3 months. We're not the only group that's developing a vaccine. A number of companies and they're projecting our group that by the next 3 months we'll be able to begin testing it in humans.
So we hope that the first vaccines can get into human studies within a period of months, hopefully by early summer, to show that they're safe. So the biggest challenge is really the time. Making vaccines is not necessarily a quick endeavor. We saw with the Ebola vaccine, for example, that took 10 years of development before it went into clinical trials. What is good news is that we've learned a lot from SARS and from MERS in terms of designing vaccines against coronaviruses, and that means we can move much faster.
No estamos solos, hay muchos grupos trabajando en ello, hay grupos que están también en fase más avanzada, simplemente porque existen vacunas experimentales tanto por MERS como por SARS, estos prototipos o prototipos derivados para este nuevo coronavirus. Pero ya te digo, creo que nuestro prototipo puede proteger o protegerá frente a distintos coronavirus pasados y esperemos que también futuros en el caso de que sea así.
Outbreaks like SARS, MERS, Ebola, bird flu, and now this new COVID-19 virus show just how vulnerable human hosts are. But what do we learn from these big fights with viruses? Can humans eventually conquer viruses and infectious diseases one day?
I think health officials think that we are much better prepared now, especially after Ebola. Chinese scientists were able to sequence the genome of this virus very quickly, post it online for people to see, share that information. Scientists can work very hard to figure out diagnostics.
I don't think we'll ever be able to conquer infectious diseases. You got to think about bacteria and viruses, that they're multiplying every second. And so they are far more nimble than we are. We've had a number of advancements. If I think comparing 2003 to now, with this new coronavirus and SARS, it took us months to figure out what this was. It took us quite a while to get testing for it. Here you can see the advancement where we knew this was a coronavirus within a matter of a week or so. Once we realized this was a problem, we already had a test for it. That's moved very quickly. The international consortium coming together to look at vaccines never happened that fast before. You think back to the Spanish flu, we didn't have ventilators, we couldn't intubate people, we couldn't really even give them oxygen. And how far we have come now with the different supportive care we can provide. So we've really come a very, very long way in the last, certainly 50 years, but even in the last 10 years, we've come a long way.
If history teaches us anything, it's that while pandemics may start small, their impacts can be as dramatic as wars and natural disasters. We have come a very long way from the Spanish flu pandemic to here today. The difference is that science gives us the ability to detect pandemics right at the very beginning and to take action to mitigate their impacts before they spread too widely.